Today's episode of The Walk Show is brought to you in part by Jam Spots. Established in 1989, that's over 30 years, Jam Spots has provided safe and accessible spaces for musicians to create and collaborate. They have hourly, weekly, and monthly rentals to suit your needs. And here's the thing, these rooms rent out at artist-friendly rates. Cause let's face it, we can't all be John Bon Jovi. The best part about Jam Spots is its rich history in the Guelph music scene. It truly is a big part of the local scene and even has a music community within itself. And I should know, almost every band I've ever been a part of has had a room with Jam Spots. That's a ton of rehearsals, photo shoots, and even a music video we shot there with Arise and Ruin. If you're looking for a space within our music community, check out jamspots.com. That's JAMSPOTS.com. Jam Spots. Make some noise! Howdy, folks. Welcome to The Walk Show, podcasting on all the major platforms. Thank you so much for listening. You can also support the show on Facebook and Instagram. I'm sitting here sipping on my Cavern coffee and really thinking about how thankful I am to be able to do this, to be able to host a show that's really getting its own legs at this point. To be able to work with fantastic local businesses like Cavern Coffee and Jam Spots. To be able to fire a question out to the listeners on social media and actually get thoughtful or at least funny responses. It's important to stop and smell the roses sometimes and to truly be thankful for the people around you. To each and every one of you, I'm genuinely appreciative of your time and attention. I really want this show to be interactive, and I truly believe The Walk Show is a community in and of itself. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I have some gigs coming up with Apricity. August 25th, we're going to be a part of the Country Rumble Festival in Puslinch, Ontario, and that's raising money for mental health initiatives. October 1st, we're at the Atria in Oshawa. October the 8th, we're at Royal City Studios here in Guelph. And we have a TBA in Hamilton, November 4th. I'll also be at the Moonshine Cafe in Oakville on November 19th, backing up the Strother Martins. Keep your eyes peeled to the Walk Show socials for details, or follow Apricity or the Strother Martins. I believe they're both on Facebook and Instagram. Beyond that, you can also check out apricitymusic.com. Last bit of shameless self-promotion. I still have some merch kicking around, so hit me up at thewalkshow@gmail.com if you're interested in a mesh back ball cap, or a toque, or a t-shirt, or some vinyl stickers. I have it all. I reached out to you on Facebook and Instagram to ask you who's winning the Super Bowl this season, and here's what you had to say.
Now it's time to check that mail. I'm gonna check that mail good. Yeah, check that mail.
From Tyler Klompenhauer. Hey, buddy. Tyler says, my money is on the team who can throw farthest. Yeah, that's probably who's going to take it, buddy. From Ryan Drury. Hey, brother. And before I get into Ryan's answer, everybody go check out the new single from Clarence Street. It's called No Line, and it fucking crushes. Well done, Ryan. He says, Bills. Too much depth for others to deal with. High-end receiving core led by Diggs. Supplemented by breakout stars like Davis and McKenzie. Josh Allen can put the ball wherever he wants, and when that isn't available, he can make it all happen with his feet. Defensively, they're an absolute unit, and that was before adding Von Miller. White isn't even back yet, defensively, and when he is, that secondary is scary fast and full of ball hawks. They're so well-rounded and can win however you want. Well, shit, Ryan, you'd think you were a sports personality on the radio or something. Yeah, man, go Bills Mafia. From David Gupta, hey bro, David says, I think bracket sports team and bracket really has it in the bag this year. Yeah, so it looks like two not so big football fans and one enormous football fan. Me myself, I haven't really watched football in a few years. I used to be pretty big into it, and I'm a Saints guy, so I gotta go with them. As always, thank you so much for your participation. If you aren't writing in and you want to get in on the action, when you see an episode question pop up on Facebook and Instagram, send your answers to thewalkshow@gmail.com or leave your answer in the comment section. On that note, let's do today's Double Feature Preacher.
The Double Feature Preacher is brought to you by Cabin Coffee.
Woo, that is a tasty f***ing brew.
And by The Walk Show.
Today's music feature is Brotherhood by Cambridge, Ontario's Trapped in Thought. This track brings me back to the sound of heavy music in the aughts and many of the great bands that I toured with back then. A sound that really pulls on the heartstrings, but also makes you want to bang your head. Brotherhood is the debut single from Trapped in Thought's latest EP, For Those Who Never Came Home, which drops September 9th. There's also a lyric video for Brotherhood available on YouTube. You can support Trapped in Thought by checking out the EP on any of the major streaming platforms, or better yet, go buy it on iTunes. Also be sure to give them a follow on the socials. Today's Cabin Coffee feature is their Finca La Indonesia, which is a light roast from Colombia. It has a similar taste to the San Jose Natural, but this one has hints of orange, black tea, and chocolate. Another home run for Cabin Coffee. At this point, I've had their light roasts, medium roasts, and dark roasts, and I honestly can't pick a favorite. They're all high-quality roasts. If you're in the Guelph area today, you should pop in and grab one of their top-notch beverages. Cabin Coffee is located at 1467 Gordon Street in Guelph. Check out what they're up to at www.cabin.coffee. Give them a follow on the socials, and if you want to help out the Walk Show, please let them know that I sent you.
Stick around to the end of the podcast to hear the full song from today's Double Feature Preacher artist.
For this episode, I had a conversation with Justin Pierrot of Stormland. And I didn't know Justin before we had this chat, but I came away really liking this dude. He's smart, he's fun to talk to, and he was extremely patient with the lag we were dealing with throughout the episode. Good old technology. Either way, we had a great chat, and I hope you dig it. So let's get into it. And we are rolling here today with Justin Pierrot of Stormland, all the way from BC. Thanks for making time for me today, dude. I know we're on a bit of a time difference, which always freaks me out.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
The wonders of time zones. But yes, again, sorry for interrupting. Wow, this is getting off to a very Canadian start with all the apologies.
Yeah, sorry, bud. Yeah, there's always a little bit of a lag when it comes to this format, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just so thankful for the technology that I just don't care. I used to care a lot.
Yeah. And now it's like that Faith No More album. Who cares a lot?
Nice. A bunch of sorries, some interruptiness, some lag, and a Faith No More reference. All within the first minute. I think we're off to a fantastic start.
Agreed.
Awesome. So you are all the way from BC. Whereabouts in BC?
I'm in Burnaby, BC, so just outside of Vancouver.
Okay. Burnaby, is that? Okay. I know where it is.
Yes,
Is
the
it just north of Vancouver?
just kind of north and east. Like there is literally a road running between the cities called Boundary Road. So like right butted up against each other.
Okay, cool. Yeah, for whatever reason, I'm thinking of Surrey. Is it close to Surrey?
Yeah, it goes Vancouver, Burnaby, New Westminster, Surrey.
Okay. Very cool. And have you been up to any shows? Have you played any shows, anything like that since things opened up in BC?
I went and I saw a Legion and Omnium Gatherum and Archspire in the spring, and that's been about it for shows. I don't play live myself, just being a one-man band, so I can't say I've done any of that, but the shows I've attended have been good and pretty raucous. I got to see Archspire when they found out they won their Juno, so I think they were quite hyped that night.
That's awesome. And I've not heard that band. Are they local or were they a touring act coming through?
Archspire's from Vancouver, but no, they're one of the bigger technical death metal bands. And their vocalist, he was even kind of the growl coach for Jason Momoa on that Apple TV show C or Sight, whatever that's called.
Oh, okay. Cool. And I've heard Jason Momoa is a bit of a metalhead anyway.
Yeah, I guess they bro down when they meet up.
Awesome. I don't know. I mean, obviously you're listening out there, Jason Momoa, but it's just one of those people, some people want him and some people want to be him, but everybody likes him,
Yeah, he seems like a pretty personable fellow.
Yeah. And I mean, to pull off Aquaman, I'll be honest, I'm not much of a comic book movie guy, so I haven't seen it, but I don't know. People say it's good, and I never would have thought an Aquaman movie would be any good, so there you have it.
Yeah, it was fun. I can definitely say that it was fun. It was a nice change from the dark and dour Zack Snyder stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to get around to see it sometime, man. It's not like I dislike those movies. I just never really seem to get around to them. I tend to watch sort of the same stuff over and over. And it's not very adventurous. I just rewatched a couple of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And that's been, my jam since the 80s. And so, this is a really long way of saying I really need to step outside of my bubble every now and again.
It's so easy to get caught in the bubble. I mean, if it was up to me, I'd be watching Mel Brooks movies all the time.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I want to focus on the BC scene for a second here, because it's been a long time since I've been out there. Always had a good time in British Columbia, but what's the BC scene like these days?
Honestly, I'm kind of divorced from a lot of it since I don't play, but it seems like there's a bit of an upswell, which is great. We have bands like the Hallowed Catharsis, who I'm repping on my shirt here. Their vocalist Lita Page actually guested on the first single, Test Subject, and it did a phenomenal job. They're another one science fiction band. There's Archspire, who we talked about. There's Unleash the Archers, who are a power metal band on the come up, which is very odd to think about that for a North American power metal band. But they've got a fantastic vocalist in Brittany Hayes, and they just have a knack for writing great songs. There's a building scene in the Okanagan Valley area, the interior of BC. They've got a long-running summer metal fest called Armstrong Metal Fest, and both Kelowna and Kamloops have, in the past few years, become touring stops as well, so bands can get one more stop in between Alberta and Vancouver.
Which is key. I mean, before we started rolling, we were just talking about West Coast tours and how difficult they are, or at least they used to be. Or maybe that's my anecdotal experience, but I found, if you had one show drop, you were kind of euchred because then you're going from like, Dryden, Ontario to Calgary, with no gas money.
Yeah, I know some buddies of mine out here, Sun Eater, they just recently signed to Prosthetics. They managed to tour across the country and not completely lose their shirts, and they're very lucky that they didn't have to drop any shows.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's fantastic if that happens, and my hat's off to anybody out there touring and still doing it. I don't know how, honestly don't know how we did it back in the day, let alone how people still do it now, but it seems to me that with the age of the internet and, the removal of the old school gatekeepers, you can kind of work smart instead of just having to work hard.
Yeah, you can, sir. You don't have to hope that you can find a promoter in the back of an issue of Maximum Rock and Roll. You can look around, you can make contacts online, and hopefully you can make a good impression and they'll be willing to take a chance on you. The flip side, though, is that some of those promoters, they can take a look at what your draws are like on things like Spotify and other streaming services. They can see what your YouTube plays and comments are like. They can look at your social media presence and decide if you're really worth the money to put a show on for.
Yeah, and I guess that's smart from their vantage point, but I don't know. That kind of freaks me out, man, because it's I don't know. I just feel like I'm gonna be the old guy in the room, right? Just because I am the old guy in the room, but it just seems like such a disconnect from reality. Now, I suppose those numbers are indicative of reality because that's literally who's listening and watching and clicking and all that. But I don't know, man. It seems like it just seems so mechanical or artificial. I don't know. Does that make any sense, or am I just a rambling old man right now?
No, it does make sense, and it's tough for bands at the lower levels nowadays. It's not like they have financials from their last tour to be able to show to a booking agent. And they're generally operating without a booking agent. They're TMing them. The bands are TMing themselves. They're doing all their own tech work. They're organizing their merch. They've got a social. You have to have one guy who's dedicated to social media. It really has become a full-on business to be an independent band at this point.
Yeah, you definitely need to wear 10 hats. It's crazy, man. And again, my hat's off to anybody out there doing it competitively in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, in one respect, it's easier to just be the one-person band. I know we've got a mutual friend, David Gupta from World Eaters, and my hat's off to him that he's trying to put together a bit of a live lineup. I think he'll do great, but I think he'll agree with me, and I think you'll agree that it's a lot easier to just record at home, do everything yourself, and set it out without the hassle of having to hunt down promoters to not only book you, but after the show to make sure you get paid, hustle at a merch table, try not to have some rando spill booze on your amps at the club because there's no all ages venues anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's convenient, and it's, I don't know, it's just different, I guess. I mean, going out and playing, even locally, I do very much still enjoy. And I've been gigging more now than I have been in years and years. So I really am enjoying that. But it is cool to be able to kind of do everything yourself. If you have a DAW and you can, spend some time to try to get good at it, you really can do it all yourself. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be harder in a sense to do metal because getting the sense of feeling, the sense of pressure and presence required it's a different style of engineering and arranging than it is if, say, you're doing electronic music. That still requires a lot of dialing in of sounds, a lot of little tweaks, but it's a different skill. But getting those tweaks is a different skill set as opposed to putting an analog signal in and then trying to work it digitally. You're just, you're starting with a sine tone in your DAW when you're doing electronic music as opposed to a guitar input.
Yeah, and we're hitting on all kinds of topics that I love. But I do want to circle back for a second and just, shout out to David Gupta. How do you know David?
Twitter.
Okay.
Twitter is a wonderful resource. Somehow he ended up in this kind of corner of metal Twitter I'm in. We're both Bolt Thrower fans, and we just enjoy each other's music. I think he is a fantastic songwriter, and that cover of "Running Up That Hill" he did before it was cool was very good as well.
Yeah, he was psychic about that one. That's crazy.
He's ahead of the curve.
He definitely is.
Yep.
And to the listeners, I mean, yeah, David's been on the show a couple of times, and he may or may not be on the show again very soon. So keep your eyes peeled to the socials for that one. You'd mentioned you felt divorced from the scene because you don't play live. But surely, I mean, what you do obviously contributes to the metal community, does it not? Like, are you accepted by peers in the scene?
Honestly, I don't go out enough to really be considered part of it. I work a graveyard shift job. I have a wife. I have 2 kids, so I can't be out there all the time pressing the flesh and shaking hands and kissing babies and all of that. So locally, I'm not really part of a scene, but I suppose online you could say I am, because I've been able to connect with people like David, people like Ross Sewage from Exhumed, who also guests on the album. I've been able to connect with people and like Corb Lund and Biff Naked, just mutual Twitter follows. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to check out the music, but that it's just amazing what you can do online. Even with my last EP, the Incident Report EP, thanks to Twitter, I was able to get Fallon Bowman from Amphibious Assault and formerly of Kitty to do some voice acting on that.
Wow. Dude, that's crazy. And you've had a member of Exhumed in there as well. That's crazy, dude. Actually, one of my... sorry, go ahead, man.
I was just going to say, Ross is a sweetheart, so if they can ever get back into Canada one day, fingers crossed, go see them.
Yeah. Well, a very good friend of mine, shout out to Matt Connell. I don't know if he'd be listening, but he played drums in Exhumed for a while. And he was from Ottawa, so he would actually just take a bus to California and then jump out on the road with them and then come back home. Totally not sustainable, but man, he was a hell of a good drummer. And I assume he still is. I haven't seen him in quite some time. But
hopefully he's doing well.
Yeah, just a random shout out. I throw him out wherever I can, man.
Yeah. I mean, you should always support your friends. Rising tides raise all ships.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I mean, that really does come back to sort of the scene or community, right? It's, I think what you're doing, I mean, sounds fantastic, by the way. And you are reaching out to different podcasts and so in a sense, you are shaking those hands and kissing those babies. I just think maybe you're doing a little, again, smarter and not harder.
It is hard though. I'm not using any PR this time around, so I'm definitely having to be on top of things, making sure I get press releases written and out, doing any video work myself, which is, I mean, I don't have a great setup. It's pretty bare bones. I'm just recording using a webcam or a cell phone, but I seem to be making it, in free software, but I seem to be not doing horrible. I've seen worse.
Well, it's really cool, man. And again, I mean, it sounds fantastic. And we were talking a little bit before we started rolling just about how you are engineering your stuff. Is that correct?
That's right. Just in my living room. One of the perks of the graveyard shift, one of the very few silver linings about it, is that on my nights off, when everybody's asleep, I can just plug my guitar into my DAW or my bass. I can start programming drums and I can start writing and recording. Vocals is a little more difficult. That requires some planning and sometimes losing some sleep to record. Well, I get up early while the kids are at school and doing it in an afternoon. So my upstairs neighbors don't get too angry, and I just try and put an hour, maybe an hour and a half in to get those vocals done.
Very cool. And do you have
But,
like a somewhat of an ISO booth or a closet or anything like that?
No, it's just my living room. I just go right into this SM58 that you can see because you're seeing me on video here. But yeah, this is the same mic I use for recording vocals.
Dude, 58s are awesome, man. They literally do everything. Them and 57s, fantastic mics. I mean, they're certainly, I don't want to say they're underappreciated. They're not underappreciated, but I don't. Okay, so I suppose you, for whatever reason, can't see me on this chat, but I'm using a Shure SM7B, and
Yeah,
it's a nice mic for sure, but 58s are fantastic as well.
yeah, they're the workhorse mic. And one day I'd like to get an SM7B. I've had people from bigger bands tell me, "Come on, man, you got to use the SM7. Step your game up." But I seem to do okay with the 58. And there's, even if I don't play live, there's something fun about being able to record my vocals with the 58 in hand and just going until I'm a pool of sweat.
There's something cool about the handheld. Like, do you hold it when you do vocals, or is it in a stand?
Depends on my mood, but I will hold it. And it's a good thing I don't record video because I'm sure it's rather embarrassing on its own. If it was on a stage, I'm sure it would look better. But
dude,
yeah,
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, because you do the movements, you get into the music, you've got the hand movements going. You sing with your hands.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, I do the podcast with my hands, I find, especially, I enjoy doing the monologue segments and the intro segments, but I don't think I'm particularly great at it. So I find sometimes I got to get my hands moving so that I can get, maybe it's the blood flowing. I don't know what it is, but it gets me in that right headspace to just lay it down the way I want to lay it down instead of being like a super shy guy or something.
Yeah, and on the flip side, it's said that some of the greatest orators of our time, they speak with their hands as much as with their voices.
Yep. Well, I definitely, I know what you're saying there. And I know what you're saying in terms of, I don't know, just being that vocalist in that room by yourself. Like, you feel so silly. I mean, for me, so I just turned 40. So now I'm that 40-year-old screaming into a microphone in a room, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I get it. I'm 38 next month, so I feel you. Yeah, we're not that far apart in age.
It's, I hear you, dude. It's, I don't know. There's something about it. Like, if you just kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes I have a little bit of trouble getting into the moment, particularly when I'm recording vocals. I find I can get more into talking, to be honest. But when I get into vocals, like, I don't know. I picture myself looking at myself, and I just I laugh. I'm like, this is so silly.
Yeah, and I try to lose myself in the performance as much as possible. I'll keep my lyrics up on the screen, on my computer screen while I do them. And the only reason I know just how funny I look is I have tried to record video of myself doing vocals, and I go back and it's just like I'm moving around like a 90s rapper.
See, that's awesome, man. That's way cooler than what I do.
Well, it's just, your style is your style, and you can make it work for you as best you can. And if you ever take your music out live again, you're not playing with, not doing session work for other people, but assembling your own band and going for it again, I'm sure within the context of the music, within the context of the band, it'll look great.
Yeah, well, lucky for me, so I do have a solo project that I do plan to take live, but I play guitar and sing in it, so, at least I have the safety of that piece of apparatus in my hand as opposed to, running around, which I used to do, but I don't know, I'm like, I feel like 10 years and like 40 pounds, away from where I need to be if I want to do that shit. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you could always do the Justin Hawkins thing now. From what I understand, when he plays live with the Darkness, he'll do all the vocals, and then a tech will run out, put a guitar around his shoulders, and he'll play the solo. The tech will take it away, and he'll resume, dancing around.
That's amazing. And I actually just found out that guy's still around. I had no idea how. I saw him on the Taylor Hawkins concert where he ripped the mic out of Brian Johnson's hands.
Yeah.
And I've seen him online a bunch, but I was thinking, like, where the hell did this guy come from? I mean, they haven't had a hit since the early aughts, no?
At least not here. The UK is an entirely different market.
That's true.
Yeah, but now he's got this YouTube channel. It's utterly charming. I'll watch him. I'll watch Rick Beato, and try and gain insights on songwriting and arrangement from both of them. And it's fascinating what he brings to the table, because he's been there. He was a part of that UK scene. He was in the hit machine more so than Beato was on the production, and because Hawkins was right there in the thick of it with, a couple of hits, and I guess he had his issues, and now we are where we are. Now he is where he is, and we are where we are, looking back at the Darkness fondly with a bit of nostalgia.
Yeah, that's true. They definitely have that nostalgia vibe. I mean, I feel like when they came on the scene, they had that nostalgia vibe because it was kind of a throwback style.
Yeah, and they're one of the few bands that was really able to channel the vibes of Queen. A lot of bands try, like, I think Fun said that they were trying to be like Queen, but they never really pulled it off. And I think I'm going to say this because I worked security at a show they did years ago, but the vocalist was winded halfway through the first song, and I don't think you can really accurately reproduce Queen if you don't have the stamina.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It's
and Hawkins, he's got it.
Yeah.
And he's got the devil may care attitude as well.
Yeah, he's a really funny guy, like really charismatic. I just couldn't believe it just seemed like he came out of nowhere to me. Obviously he didn't, but yeah. Let's see here.
And good for him. Like I said, I think he had some substance issues, but he managed to get through them, and he looks like he's in a good place in his life. So more power to him. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it would be an absolute failure on my part if we didn't talk about the album that you're dropping, The Human Cost. And that comes out September 30th, right?
That's right.
Cool, man. Yeah.
No, that's right.
Let's talk about it. What can people expect to hear?
Well, this is my first full album with the 8-string guitar, and that it really opened things up for me. You hear it, before it was very, very standard kind of mellow death, kind of groovy death metal with a little hints of grind, I guess some people found in it. But now I feel like I've really opened up my playing. I think I've actually fit the tag of just barely technical progressive death metal, because I'm trying to use different structures, different chords, a lot more arpeggios, and just opening things up. I mean, on the last single, Esper, there's a reggaeton beat at the end, like that last riff before at the end of the song, that one where you just want to shake your booty. That, or at least that was the intent of the riff, but that's a reggaeton beat. It might not sound like it in context, but that is absolutely a reggaeton beat that I programmed behind it all.
That's awesome. And so I'm assuming, so you recorded it at home?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And just
programmed the drums.
Yep. Sorry, I cut you off there. The lag is getting me.
Yeah. No, I programmed all the drums. I do my best to study drummers and drum patterns so I can understand why certain beats are used where they are and how best to make things sound musical, and just trying to work that in. There's songs where you'll hear funk-inspired drumming, mostly in how I use the hi-hat. because an up-tempo funk song, you'll hear really active, closed, open hi-hat work. And I think, you were playing drums on that last tour, so I think you understand that.
Yeah.
Because I think you did that tour with the blues band, so you'd be doing some of that active hi-hat work as well, depending on some of the songs you were playing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I will say, just as an aside, playing, like a blues shuffle, seemingly easy, pretty tough though when you keep it going. It's or tougher than it seems anyway, I'll say that. But yes, back to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely get more articulate or less articulate, but busy hi-hats are a pretty good indicator of something funky or something jazzy. Typically just something that's not meat and potatoes rock.
Yeah. And, I like to use a lot of syncopation, and I like to mix up my snares, and you'll see, I'll take EDM style drops and use them at times, just like the slowly building snare roll that builds over 3, 4, 5, 6 bars. It just things like that. I'm trying to bring every kind of influence I can, run it through my filter, and comes out as death metal.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, it does sound fantastic. It's amazing what, you can accomplish at your own home these days. It's and obviously you're a good engineer. I mean, you can definitely botch, it's not like you can just plug into any DAW and just be anyone and put something out that sounds great. You do have to have a skill set for it. But it is amazing how accessible this stuff is these days.
For sure. And if you want to put the time in, like if you want to take the time and manually change up the velocities on your cymbals and toms in your drum programming, that goes a long, and even just nudge them just a little bit off the grid, that can go a long way into setting you apart.
Oh, big time, man. I mean, I'm a drummer. I'm teaching drums again. Like, I know a thing or two about drums, and when I program, I spend so much time on the velocity, because you really have to. I think that's the difference between, good sounding program drums versus not so good sounding program drums.
Yeah, and sometimes, you just want to, max the velocity for everything. Like if, say, you're doing an industrial song, yeah, you kind of want the drums to sound processed and mechanical, but other times you don't. I mean, you can get away with the quantized kick and snare when you're doing death metal because that's kind of become expected, and with drum triggers, that makes it very easy to recreate within a DAW because you're using the triggers to level out the sound. So everything comes through with a clear transient at a clear, steady level.
Well, exactly. And I mean, the trigger, like it was introduced so you could just bloody hear the kick drum in death metal, right? Because otherwise it was impossible in the mix. But then it took on its own characteristic.
Yeah, and it's a fun sound. For sure, it's fun to play around with, and it makes things a little bit easier being able to have that. But you couldn't do that if you were trying to, say, program a reggae song or program a ska song.
It's funny you say reggae, man, because so we played a million years ago. Arise played with the Black Dahlia Murder in Toronto, and Shannon Larkin was on drums, like my hero. And so I was picking his brain a little bit, and he was using an Alesis DM5 trigger module on the reggae setting. And he said that's kind of how he got his sound for his kick drum. He didn't use the death metal setting that everybody and their uncle were using. It was good old reggae setting.
Yeah, and it's those little things, those little changes that set bands apart. I mean, I'm not sure what Alan Cassidy, the current drummer, is using now, and I don't know if you heard the news today, but the Black Dahlia Murder is gonna soldier on because that's all they can really do.
Wow.
And Brian Eschbach moving from guitar to vocals, and Ryan Knight's rejoining the fold on guitar.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, that was just announced today. I was acquainted with Trevor. Occasionally, rarely we'd message back and forth on Twitter. I had the chance to meet him and have some beers with him at a show, and he was just the nicest human being. And his passing really affected the metal scene. And these are people who were just fans who he treated like he just treated the fans like they were friends. And I can't even imagine what it was like for his actual friends and family. And for them to be able to come back and keep going like this, more power to them. I can't wait to see what they do.
Oh, 100%, man. I mean, yeah, I never knew Trevor. I mean, he was really nice to us that one night that we played with him. And, I mean, that was enough for me, right? He just seems like a lovable person. And just the fact that he wasn't a dick. He very well could have been a dick, and we would have been, I mean, I don't want to say like good with it, but fine with it. But he wasn't. He was a nice guy, and, on stage he gave a shout out to all the bands and by name, and I don't know, he just had that class. And so it really did, it was a tough one when he passed, man. And I'm typically not that affected by celebrities passing. But yeah, he just seemed like such a good human being.
Yeah, he was very much one of those people who wanted to raise up others. He did so many guest appearances, and he didn't charge for all these smaller, super extreme bands, and he didn't even charge them for it.
Yeah, which is crazy because, at least for a long time, I'm sure they weren't making very good money.
No, but the fact that he did that because he wanted to help people get bigger. He figured the more people who could get ears on these bands, the bigger extreme metal could get. And, he lived it. And, it's kind of nice to see that ethos in music, period, because, nowadays, because of the business aspect, it can be very easy to make it just about the money. And, I'm not saying that artists shouldn't be paid for their work. I mean, if I want to collaborate with someone, my first question is always going to be, so what is your rate? But the fact that he didn't charge is that's really cool.
Yeah, I think you put that perfectly, because I don't see anything wrong with artists getting paid for their art. In fact, I think that's one of the greatest things that can happen to an artist when they get to, focus on their art as their primary thing. And unfortunately, we all have to keep the lights on. But I know there are some artists that they really don't like that sentiment. And I understand that too. But I feel like I'm always kind of pushing the music and the business here on the Walk Show. And that's just sort of who I am as a person. So there it is.
Yeah. And, I'll always try and help out my friends too. Like, I will do my best to get bands like the Halogotharsis out there, like Sun Eater, like World Eaters. I will do my best to get people to check them out on Twitter, on Bandcamp Fridays. I always try and do a thread of my friends and acquaintances and well-wishers who have albums coming out or who have music out there, even if I'm not necessarily a fan. Like, for whatever reason, I seem to be connected to a lot of black metal acts, and I'm just not a black metal fan for the most part.
Okay.
It's got to be cut with something else. Like Sun Eater, I think the best way to put it is they cut their black metal with dad prog, and it makes for a really nice sound, and they engineer it very warmly, very earthily. And I think that if you were to check it out, you might enjoy that.
Well, I definitely should check that out. And you said they're called Sun Eater, right?
Yes. Yeah. I will, I will send you a link to their Bandcamp afterwards. They recently signed a prosthetic record, so they're on the come up. So great for them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's amazing that prosthetic is still going. That's they've been around a long time.
They have, and they seem to. I know there were some issues with their business practices early on, but it seems like that's all cleared up, and they're going out of their way to sign bands that are not only good, but they tend to have good people for the most part. They try and do a lot of quality control to keep out the, for lack of a better word, chuds.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something that kind of hits home for me. Arise was signed to Victory, and there are all kinds of horror stories out there about Victory Records. And I think, some of them are probably true. And I don't know, some of them, maybe you need a little context to understand. And I don't know. I mean, like, shit happens. And I mean, there are almost always two sides to a story, I would think. And I think there's this sort of, I don't know, there's this group of bands that are just going to hate a record label because they're a record label. They want to take the advance. They don't want to pay it back. And that was, our experience was, I would say it was very positive. And I don't know. So point being, when I hear, someone throwing shade at a label, I just, I don't buy it straight away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, in Victory's case, much like with Earache, there's definitely enough bands saying that there's smoke that there probably is a fire. But I'm glad that you were able to have a good experience with Victory, because even bands like Hatebreed, they didn't necessarily have the best experience.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know. I mean, so many different things happen in different eras, and I don't know. There's also like the whole thing of just you get what you're willing to fight for. So there are certain bands, and Arise was one of them. I mean, we didn't really fight for a hell of a lot, and so we didn't really get a whole hell of a lot. And that's on us.
Yeah. When you're a young band too, it's hard to know, the most important thing a young band should do before they have a manager, before they have a booking agent. But if the minute a label comes by, make friends with a contract lawyer, just to have somebody to take whatever is offered to you to go over with you, and they can let you know if you're going to get screwed.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of labels will give you, that'll be part of the budget, is they give you money to go get an entertainment lawyer. That way you can go back and forth, and you're on not equal footing. There certainly is a hierarchy there, and again, I understand the distaste for that. But I guess, I don't know. I guess all I'm saying is there's a lot of people that are just going to arbitrarily hate on a record label because they're a record label. And I think in a lot of circumstances, they can be fantastic, even in today's day and age.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't be averse to signing with a label if one came to me and said they wanted to release some physical product. I'd listen. There's certain labels that, for ethical reasons, based on some of the bands that they like to sign, or a lot of reports of bad behavior I might not want to deal with, but I would certainly listen to most labels that came my way. But again, that's also my ethics at work, not necessarily somebody else's.
Yeah, fair enough, man. And I think that's probably a good point to take the quick commercial break, show some love to the sponsors, and we will be right back right after this.
Today's episode of The Walk Show is brought to you in part by musicvids.ca, owned and operated by friend of the show and one of the most talented dudes I know, Mr. Matt Connell. Matt has been providing audiovisual services to artists and musicians for years. He's shot music videos for a ton of artists, including Danielle Todd, Enter the Haggis, Patrick Ballantine, and his brilliantly talented wife, Amber McLean. If you're an Amber fan like I am, you might notice her track Run Rabbit in the background. This track is from her album Me, which was recorded and co-produced by, you guessed it, Matt Connell. Check out musicvids.ca to see what they're all about, and be sure to give them a follow on the socials. Oh, and let them know The Walk Show sent you to receive a 15% discount.
Shouldn't make it about you needing space. More look like you are hiding face in that hole.
Hey business owners, wouldn't it be cool if I was taking this time to talk about your product or service? I've enjoyed building relationships with some very cool companies since I started this thing, and I am looking to expand the Walk Show family. I work with some great sponsors, and I've sponsored events through the podcast, so I do understand how valuable time and resources can be. If you have any interest or questions about working with the show, hit me up at thewalkshow@gmail.com. Again, that's thewalkshow, W-O-K, @gmail.com. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Now let's get back to the show.
are back. Man, I feel like we're having just as good a conversation off air as we are on air. Which is great,
Sure,
man.
Because we were just talking coffee, and somehow that went into the Josta show, and it's interesting. There's a lot of music podcasts out there, but not all of them are necessarily hosted by the most engaging people. So it's nice when people like yourself, like Joss, to have shows that are worth the listen. You can get people to open up a little bit more. You can maybe go a little off the rails in an entertaining way.
Yeah, well, I think the way to do it is to just kind of wing it, man. I feel like, I don't know, some of the podcasts, because I'm always on the lookout for new podcasts. I'm still an iTunes guy, and I will be until there's no longer iTunes, but I just find, and I'm certainly no pro, but just from my opinion, some people try to get a little too clinical or a little too surgical with it, and the ones that I enjoy personally are just two people or 3 people or 4 people just riffing.
Yeah. There's certain podcasts that require that sense of clinicism. Like, I don't know if you've ever listened to Cocaine and Rhinestones. That's a look back at the history of country music in the 20th century, and it's utterly fascinating. It is meticulously researched and very well produced, and it's all done by one guy, Tyler May and Co. That's David Allan Coe's son.
Really?
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Wow.
And then he goes on and he has another podcast that he does with a buddy called Your Favorite Band Sucks.
Okay. And the first one was called Cocaine and
Rhinestones.
Oh, and Rhinestones. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to binge something while you're working, he's got 2 seasons. The first season is kind of a grab bag of really interesting stuff. The second season was just all George Jones, and it was fascinating.
Huh.
And I'm not even a huge country guy, but it's just a good story is a good story, and especially if it's well told.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. And you can learn something from some of those. The ones that are a little more meticulously thought out and researched and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I could definitely check that out. I guess I am kind of contradicting myself here. I do like podcasts of all shapes and sizes, we'll say, but I just find when I'm looking for one, particularly about, about music or something similar to this sort of format, I just, I don't know. I enjoy the ramblings of certain people more so than, there's some that are like, I feel like there are 3-hour conversations boiled down to 15 minutes. And I'm exaggerating slightly, but to me, that's just, I don't know. It sucks the soul out of the conversation.
Yeah. And, there's some great podcasts where it's just people riffing. Like one of my favorites that I listen to is the Department of Metal Antiquities. Nick Cameron, who's a buddy of mine on Twitter, and a musician named Duncan Evans, who's been in a bunch of bands in the UK. They look for lost albums or lesser loved albums that are tangentially metal related. Stuff like the last one they did last week was Tony Martin's solo album. Tony, the guy who was the least known Black Sabbath singer. They'll go and they'll listen to these. They'll talk about the songs, and then at the end of the episode, they'll decide whether they would spin it again or they'll toss it in the bin.
Huh. Man, that sounds good. You listen to a lot of podcasts, don't you?
Yeah, I have a commute and I'll work. And, when I'm working in the shop, sometimes I have music on. Sometimes I will listen to podcasts, and I try and listen to a broad swath to get a lot of information. There's a Gundam podcast I listen to that helps me get a lot of context that I bring into my lyrics, since that's all, Gundam themed, Mobile Suit Gundam. I'm not sure if you watched it on YTV when they were showing Gundam Wing or Gundam Seed, but
no,
that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that I use as the lens for my lyrics.
Well, I was going to ask you because when we were setting up this chat, just going back and forth, you'd mentioned that you were a Gundam-themed death metal band. And I had never heard of Gundam before. So I Googled it, and I'm still not really that sure. So it's an anime series? Or is it just a universe from a series?
It's an anime franchise at this point. There's like a main continuity, there's alternate continuities, and it's over 40 years old, so there's a lot of lore to it that I can use to mine for a lyrical inspiration.
Man, that's really cool. Like I've definitely heard of concept albums, but so your project is somewhat of a concept band.
Yeah, and I've done, like I said with the Incident Report EP that I mentioned earlier, that was a straight up concept EP that was telling the story of a patrol in that Gundam universe gone wrong through the conceit of it being the lone survivor giving an incident report to his commanding officer.
Wow.
Yeah. I like King Diamond. Can you tell?
Well, how long would you say it takes you to write your lyrics? I mean, are you basically like kind of humming out, melodies or cadences and then, getting the words to fit? Like how, I assume a lot of work goes in.
It's a little of both. I'll try and get the initial cadence. Then I'll start with the lyric. Then I'll get started on the lyrics once I decide what the theme's going to be, and then I'll pare everything down. Now, there's a lot of editing that goes into what I do because it would be very easy for me, especially as a solo act, to have 8, 9, 10-minute songs. Just jam packed with lyrics that I'm trying to spit out like I'm Jeff Walker from Carcass trying to cram 30 syllables into 2 bars. But there's a lot of editing involved, and right up until I'm recording, because I don't really get a chance to rehearse the vocals beforehand. So I kind of have to do it on the fly, go with what's in my head, and then make it fit.
Okay. Do you ever have do you ever go through the list of tunes like sort of a one person practice, or is it more just a recording project and then once it's done, it's done?
It's more just a recording project. I've gone through more with this album because I did some guitar playthroughs. Sorry, I did one guitar playthrough, and I toyed with doing some others. But because I don't play live, I don't worry about it so much. I probably should. Sometimes I'll go back and just work on stuff to get it back down. But otherwise, it is kind of fire and forget.
Okay. No, that's very cool, man. I think there's something very cool about it because you don't have to, I don't know, you can just hyper focus on the art form in the studio. You don't have to worry about band practice or the politics of, this band member's mad at that band member and all of the bullshit that goes along with it. It's just, it's an interesting take. I don't often talk to people that are just part of recording projects. Yeah, and as as we've talked about, I did try and have a band once, and it didn't end well. And unless I'm just hiring people out for a live gig, then I don't think I'm the right kind of person to try and keep a band together. I don't have the right psychology for it. I'm not thick-skinned enough for that. Well, fair enough, man. I honestly don't think I am either when it comes to things that I'm writing. Now, I'm part of several projects, but mostly as a drummer, where, I don't know, I've had my ass kicked by producers, and I'll pretty much just do whatever the hell you want me to do, and if you want me to come up with something, I can do that too. But when it comes to things I write on a guitar, I get pretty precious about them, man, which is, I guess, why I have a solo project and not a band.
Yeah. Yeah, and I completely understand that, and it's very easy to get precious about your songs and your material, and sometimes you have to learn to let that go in part because sometimes the songs don't make the cut. They're not up to snuff, and that's okay. You have to be willing to have a garbage bin, and you have to be willing to, well, maybe not a garbage bin, more of a recycling bin. You have to be willing to maybe go through and say, okay, well, this song didn't work, but this part here, I think I can make that work in this other song.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know. I think because I've put out a podcast for almost 5 years now, like I really like the idea of just finishing a project and putting it out kind of warts and all. So, I mean, I'm working on a single right now. I mean, it'll sound fantastic. And shout out to Sam Pattison of Mandroid Echo Star, who's producing it. Dude knows what he's doing. But I mean, in terms of the songwriting, it was one of those songs that I just parked myself in front of my DAW and said, "You're writing a song today, and it doesn't matter what it is. You're gonna finish it." And I mean, melodically speaking, it kind of sounds like that. So, you know, but I'm gonna put it out, and I think I'm gonna be happy that, you know, I just finished it, because I could sit on a song for the rest of my life. I don't know about you. How do you feel about that?
There's some songs where I can, and there's others where it just comes together. And funnily enough, you know, you look at the history of the breakthrough song, and quite often the breakthrough song is the one the band has spent the least amount of time on. You know, Paranoid, that's a prime example of that.
Yeah.
You know, by Black Sabbath. You know, that was, we just need to get that song done. It's a hit.
Yeah. It's funny how that happens.
It's wild.
I think
if you let instinct take over, sometimes good things happen.
Sorry, yeah, you were talking about instinct taking over in this bloody lag. I'm so sorry, dude. But
that's all right.
I think you're right, man, when it comes to instinct. And maybe that's what it is. It's like instinct and no pressure. Because a lot of these things come through towards the end of a studio session, too, I find. Where it's, you need a new song and there's some pressure there, but I don't know, you're already in the studio. It's sort of just like, either we're going to do it or we're not. And then, you know, and then out it comes.
Yeah, you know, life's funny like that.
There's nothing to it but to do it, man. To bring it back to a corny cliche.
Yes, just get her done.
There you go. So you program the drums. You obviously do your own vocals, your own guitars. I assume you do your own bass guitar as well?
Yes. 8-string guitar, 6-string bass. And now that this album's done, I have to make a concerted effort to properly learn how to play that 6-string bass, because I keep it in the standard 6-string bass tuning, the B, E, A, D, G, C. And I'd really like to learn how to properly take advantage of that. Maybe not in the wheedly tech death sense, but maybe more in like a ska sense, you know, that kind of active playing around the chords and trying to bring that in. I think that would be an interesting thing to bring into death metal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the progressive aspect of it. And like progressive insofar as, I guess everyone has their own definition of what, you know, quote unquote prog is, but I just like the idea of bringing in different styles of music, just creating something interesting. Because, yeah, I love me some death metal, but I mean, the stuff that I keep coming back to is the stuff that brings in other elements, like the Faceless, for instance.
Yeah, or like a Legion with Greg Burgess, their lead guitar, one of their lead guitar players. He brings flamenco guitar into it because he's a classically trained guitarist. He's got a bachelor's in music. Or First Fragment using jazz manouche elements.
Very cool. No, that's I gotta check out. There's so much stuff, so many bands you're dropping that I have not heard. I'm gonna have to go down a bit of a rabbit hole after this.
I'm actually gonna have to double check something quickly because I think First Fragment is actually from Quebec.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, that's
and
cool.
For those who don't know what jazz manouche is, that's what we call gypsy jazz now, because, you know, gypsy's it's not an acceptable term. It's a bit of a slur now. But
right.
They're from Quebec. They're from L'Anjou, Quebec.
Okay. Yeah, there's got to be something in the water in Quebec, man. Bands have been incredible. Like metal bands from Quebec, they're just on a different level.
Yeah, and I take a lot of influence from them. I mean, the name Stormland comes from a song by Cataclysm.
Nice.
Yeah. And on Esper, the second single, those arpeggios in the chorus, that's pulled from Voivod.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you go back and you listen to Obsolete Beings, they make this really nice use of these really shimmering arpeggios, and I wanted to try and bring that vibe in. And while I get a different feeling, that's still the main inspiration there for those augmented arpeggios.
Okay, well, very cool, man. So you listen to a lot of Quebec-based metal, death metal, etc.
Yeah, yeah. There's some wild stuff there. Gorguts Neuraxis was fantastic.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah, you would have played some shows with Neuraxis back in the day, I would think.
I played one show with Neuraxis on Saint Jean le Baptiste Day. And I only remember that because, I mean, we were there Canada Day as well, and nothing happens in Quebec on Canada Day. But Saint Jean le Baptiste Day is bumping. So yeah, we played this fest with Neuraxis, and holy fuck, dude, like, so good.
Yeah, was that something that Galley Records put on?
I can't remember. Probably.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Galley Records used to be the preeminent Canadian metal label.
Yeah, and it was like, stuff like that, like super technical, heavy metal. Man.
Yeah. Like the first Despised Icon album, back when I think Melanie was her name, the vocalist who did the cricket chirps as opposed to the pig squeals.
Yeah.
Back when they were still more grind than deathcore. And then they had like Martyr, Ion Dissonance. It's almost like a who's who of Canadian metal in the aughts, at least on the East Coast.
Well, Beneath the Massacre's EP too, wasn't that Galley? I want to say. I might be wrong.
I think so. I'd have to double check on that. But yeah, if it was an important release in Canadian metal, it was on Galley for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So you play all the instruments and you program the drums. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're a drummer. I mean, you know how they apply to music. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite instrument to play? And that includes vocals.
You know what? Guitar is always the most fun, but lately I have been having fun with the bass. It's nice to have that bass, and it's nice to try and learn other styles on it, and just for fun, just for practice, try and learn, funk style, something more of a finger style. I got to learn how to play finger style. It's something that's always bothered me with the bass. I'd love to get a handle on that. I'd love to learn to play slap on it, and it can be a lot of fun playing slap, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, well, I suck at slap, but I mean, I have a hell of a great time playing bass. And I do play with my fingers, although I don't play anything very fast or technical. I have so much fun just basically bouncing between the melody and the rhythm. It's great. Yeah,
and going back to not playing anything too fast, there is a sense of playing too fast for the bass. You shouldn't necessarily be tremolo picking on a bass all the time. You can have a lot more impact if you have the guitar doing 16th notes and have the bass doing 8th notes or even quarter notes.
Yep, or just accenting the kick drum if there's any kind of syncopated rhythm, or, it's very easy to muddy up a mix with bass that's a little too busy.
Yeah, and it's very common in metal because a lot of bass players are guitar players on a bass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I want to be able to be a bassist as opposed to a guitar player on a bass.
That's awesome, man. That's I think, you can have so much fun with the bass, because you're absolutely right. I think a lot of bass players start off because they lost that game of rock, paper, scissors on who's going to play guitar in the band, right? But once you get good at bass, or like just maybe not even technically good, but just once you understand the capabilities of a bass guitar, man, you can pretty much do anything, man. It's a great instrument.
Yeah, and you look at some of the great bass players, they can get shreddy, but on the flip side, some of the best bass lines are just, you look at Van Halen with Michael Anthony, Running with the Devil, just bump, 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 bump. And that's it. And it's just rock solid, is locked in. It's like a metronome. But that's the hook, even more than Van Halen's guitar at the start there.
Yeah. Well, it's the ensemble that makes it, right? And that's the best kind of bass player. I find that the same thing with drummers. It's the drummers that aren't putting all their cards on the table. Those are the ones that attract me.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for everything. There's a time to go nuts, and then there's a time to dial it back and let somebody else or let another instrument have a bit of shine.
Yep. Well said, my friend. So I'm going to put you on the spot here real quick. So every episode I ask the question to the listeners, but I like to get my guests' take as well. And I really hope you're a sports fan, because today's question is, who's winning the Super Bowl this season? And if you're not, I guess you can just make up whatever you want.
I'm not an NFL fan, but I don't know. Let's just, for giggles, let's say the Las Vegas Raiders or whatever they are now.
Okay. Raiders. Yeah, and I got to go with Saints. I haven't followed football in a very long time, but New Orleans Saints would be my team. So there it is.
I used to be a bigger CFL guy, but I've kind of fallen out of that over the years.
Okay. Were you a Lions guy?
Yeah. Absolutely. Even like as a kid, I think it was at a church. Danny Barrett was speaking there, and I went and I got an autograph from him, and I was just the happiest little guy.
Well, isn't that where do they practice? Do they not practice in Surrey?
I think the practice arena is in Surrey. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I know,
cool.
because I think there was actually a controversy. I think I just forget if it was one of the players or one of the coaches that got pulled over by the Surrey RCMP and racially profiled. It's kind of messed up.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah, it's not good, but things aren't perfect, and we still have, as a country, we still have a long way to go towards making things better and more equitable for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. And that's sort of the beauty of music is, you can bring, not that all music has to be political or whatever. And man, I try really hard to avoid the socio-political topic on the podcast, but all things considered, it's a good platform to bring up, points that need to be pushed forward, and I'm talking about music, not the podcast so much, but hey, I guess podcasts as well.
Yeah. And, that's the funny thing about music is, even if you don't intentionally bring it in, your politics will seep into it regardless. It's just a matter of taking a look at it after the fact and figuring out what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Who you are is going to seep in, and obviously your socio-political stance is, it's a part of you for sure. I don't know how big. Sometimes I wish people could be a smaller part of some people's persona, but maybe that's a different discussion altogether.
Yeah. No, for sure. And, just even people saying they're apolitical is taking a political stance. It's just saying you're good with the status quo.
Yep.
And I think that's where we'll leave it with the political talk here. If people want to find out more about that, they can hit me up on Twitter at Stormland Band, and on Instagram. I'm actually not as active on Instagram just because I'm not the most photogenic guy, but that's at Stormland Brand, facebook.com/Stormland. You hit the music at stormland.bandcamp.com or your streaming service provider of choice. And that's Stormland, all one word, no capital L for the land. That's the Russians who didn't do their due diligence on the name.
Well, you walked right into my next question, so that's awesome. You're doing my job for me, and I appreciate it. The last thing I do on the podcast is plug two tunes. So the first one is Stormland with Esper, followed by today's double feature Preacher Artist Trapped in Thought with Brotherhood. Thank you so much for your time, man. It's been really cool getting to know you.
You as well. Thank you very much, Derek. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll do it again sometime. If you're ever this way, hit me up, and if I'm ever out west, I'll do the same, man. I feel like we made some new friends tonight in each other, man.
We've bonded.
Awesome. And to the listeners, thank you so much for your time. Catch you next time.
Awareness of the enemy. Your machine can keep up. You react too quickly. This is how it starts. You can feel it cross space, and soon you feel a new type of trace. Disease, waste, nothing radiates. You see the soul. Call out to you us. Knees behind its body is ghost will remain with you. Being all before our lives. Perception be on sight. Light up our humble time. To awaken and connect you. If only everyone else could feel what you could feel. If they could communicate without misunderstanding the blessing of our life. Lost our for too soon.